Okay, our next section, we're going to turn it over to Cait Rottler from the Southern Plains Climate Hub. She's going to talk about soil health, or fire and soil health, continuing our fire theme here in the Southern Great Plains.
Hi there. So as Dennis said, I'm Cait Rottler. I am currently kind of doing a double job as the acting director for the Southern Plains Climate Hub for just a little while longer, as well as I'm a postdoc research associate with the South Central Climate Adaptation Science Center over in Norman, which is, just down the road from El Reno. We're all kind of right in central Oklahoma. I'm so sorry about my cat. It's the worst. Okay, so I wanted to start by talking a little bit about our fire-related activities, specifically in the Southern Great Plains. Fire in this region is a native and integral part of these Southern Plains ecosystems. So really all over the Great Plains, fire is something that has been here, since time immemorial. Even before Europeans were here, the various tribes that lived in the area used essentially prescribed fire to manage the Great Plains pretty extensively. Those prescribed fires, as well as the kind that would naturally break out as a result of lightning, they became much less common as more folks moved into the area, and it simply was considered not safe, or it would have been burning cropland and cattle, essentially, if they let the fires burn. As the incidence of those fires decreased, however, the severity of the fires that remained tended to increase, and partly that's because this area is grassland basically maintained as a result of burning. So when it doesn't burn often enough, shrubs tend to get going, and once the shrubs have grown, then they're able to make the fires a lot more severe. If y'all were watching the fire news or lived in this region even during 2016 to 2018, that was an especially bad year for fires. I have 3 of the fires that occurred that were some of the largest in this kind of southwest Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas panhandle area. And some of those fires were the ones who, if you recall, I think they killed at least 2 people. So they were fairly catastrophic. They burned in a lot of really dry shrubland and grassland because we'd had a really wet season, and so all the plants had just gone absolutely insane, and then the rain abruptly stopped, and all of that dried out. And so we hit the summer winds and heat, and it was a mess. In response to that 2016-2018 fire season, we had a lot of stakeholders kind of ask for information for how they could reduce the severity of fire seasons, how they could deal with fires. Good God Almighty, that kind of thing. So we got together with some of the federal agencies in the area, so the USDA Climate Hub and NOAA. Especially the Southern Climate Impacts SCIF, and then the CASC as well with the USGS, but also non-federal entities. So Redlands Community College is a community college here in El Reno that has a fantastic agriculture program. The Oklahoma Cattlemen's Association, as well as Farm Credit of Western Oklahoma. And we cooperated to basically hold prescribed fire workshops, because prescribed fires are an excellent way of dealing with the fact that not enough fires burn anymore. So basically working with farmers and ranchers in the area to have these listening sessions in 2016 and through 2018, they're kind of ongoing, to identify what they need and what they want to learn. And then working with various groups to then actually put on prescribed burn workshops so that the stakeholders involved can learn how to run a prescribed fire, but also kind of build a network of other landowners and rural burn associations, etc., around them who would be the ones helping with that prescribed fire. So kind of also building up the network in addition to education and outreach. I believe it was one of the first ones we had was in 2018 in Beaver, Oklahoma. And that one had over 100 participants, which was, I remember, a little surprising at the time. We thought we would maybe get like 35 people, 50. We were maybe planning for 50. And then we found out from registrations like fairly shortly before that, no, there were going to be 100. So that was great because so many people showed up wanting to learn. And they actually did get to see how prescribed fires are set and then kind of how to maintain them to keep them controlled. There are a number of challenges of prescribed fire, that we approached as part of, or we have approached as some of these workshops. So one big issue is a combination kind of lack of expertise or tools or labor even to time the lighting of a prescribed fire appropriately, but also kind of how to light it, and then also how to maintain control over these prescribed fires, because obviously you don't want them getting away. So, thanks, Mel. So there's also quite a bit of potential to damage nearby structures, and then also timing of returning grazing to the land, and that the removal of vegetation really increases the potential for soil erosion, and it can decrease soil health. And one thing I did want to, remark on, since I'm running way out of time, is that soil health in this region is especially important, because if you look at crops, which is, the context we usually talk about soil health in, this region has a ton of crops. And so they're bright purple in this picture so that you can actually see them. And so we've also done a number of important things with looking at kind of how soil health management affects soil health on farms here across the region, and the role of climatic conditions versus soil health management on affecting soil health. And I'm sure I'm out of time there. So. But I can show you my results and conclusion page while I think we need to switch to someone else.
Yep, I think, Cait, it's
All
going
right.
to Curt next to pick up on the soil health. Dennis?
Yep. We're going to hand it over now to Curt Dell, who's a co-director at the USD Northeast Climate Hub, who also did a stint at as an acting director in the Southern Plains Climate Hub while we're going between directors here. And we'll hand it over to you, Curt. Thanks.
Hey, thanks, Dennis. And I probably should say, too, my full-time job is as a research soil scientist with the Ag Research Service, and I'm stationed in University Park, Pennsylvania. So what I'm going to talk about today, as I said, was a special project we're doing in the Northeastern Climate Hub, looking at links between the economics and soil health with a focus on the Northeast U.S. We're teaming up with some folks in Ag Econ at North Carolina State University. That's Dr. Rottler and Serkan Aglazan. And then our team at the Northeast Climate Hub includes Lynn Knight, Michelle Cavagelli, Aaron Lane, myself, and Dave Hollander, who's the director. Next slide, please. So the goal of that project, the overall goal, is to evaluate benefits of management practices that build and maintain soil health, as I said, with the focus on the Northeast U.S. So our main objective then is to look at the impacts on farm revenue, whether that's increased commodity yields and or a reduction in production costs. We've compiled a literature review, and so that's done. And now we're looking to identify long-term research sites that look at a soil health practice, and we're focusing on no-till or other reduced tillage methods, or ones that look at cover crops. So the sites that we're working with need to have some detailed records on management practices and then yields of the commodities. And we're using soil carbon as our indicator of soil health. And then the economists on the project then will do partial budgets for the soil health management practices versus the conventional practices. Next slide, please. And we're focusing on soil carbon as our soil health indicator, mainly because we all know that soil carbon is very involved in soil health, both in the improvement of soil biological, chemical, and physical properties. Things like improving structure, adding an energy source for microbes, and we know that soil carbon and organic matter are greatly impacted by management, and building up soil organic matter is a primary way to build soil health. And those are also things that are typically measured in long-term studies. And then we're focusing on cover cropping and reduced tillage, primarily because those are the soil health related practices that are the most widely used and cover the most acreage in row crops. We know they build up soil organic matter, and there's plenty of evidence to show that they increase soil health. Next slide. And so just looking at kind of reviewing what are some of the economic considerations. Well, first we think of it as a potential benefit to the farmer. We can be increasing our commodity yields or revenues, or hopefully and revenues, reducing fertilizer expenses and hopefully some other inputs. We have better soil moisture retention. All these things go together and help us give better resilience to extreme weather. If we're using cover crops, that can give us some additional grazing opportunities. And then there's the benefits of reduced soil erosion, decreased compaction, and reduced nitrate leaching, all things that go together to help improve revenues. And then on the societal side of the benefits, we can be building up beneficial pests that help with reducing pest outbreaks, positive influence on our pollinators. In general, we can reduce biodiversity. Controlling erosion, we're reducing sediment going into waterways. Building soil health is linked with soil carbon sequestration, and then improving water quality. Next, please. But there are some additional economic. There we go. Thanks. Some additional economic considerations, though. Things like the cost of cover crop seeds. You may need to get more machinery and have higher labor costs. Probably using more herbicides. There are some cases, especially with no-till, where yield goes down. Hopefully that won't happen. And there's opportunity costs for labor for doing some of these conservation practices. And there also is a potential that we could decrease moisture for our cash crop following the cover crop. And there's also some potential societal costs, and that could be maybe if we're providing habitat for pests that affect neighbors' crops, or those increased pesticides are going to have some environmental costs. Next, please. And so now to kind of quickly go over what highlights of our lit review on the cover crop side of things, we found that in general there's just fairly limited amount of data linking soil health to its economic considerations, and that's both considering farmer surveys, but also from field experiments. But we know that that the benefits of cover crops can be crop specific. But on the positive side, grazing and forage and forage harvest can increase the returns for using cover crops, and also cost share programs, of course, help increase the profitability. And there's a few kind of specific areas where cover crops may also help the profitability. That's one if they're helping to break down soil compaction, or maybe in cases where manure nutrients have to be retained, especially with a fall application of manure. One thing though, we're not seeing economic returns from soil health practices or cover crops in particular until about 3 or more years of implementation. And we have some gaps in the knowledge. Profitability for legumes versus non-legumes needs more study. And then new methods, things like mixes and planting green and interseeding, it can increase the efficiency of cover crops. The economics of those need to be looked at too. Next slide. And then our kind of the take homes from our lit review on the no-till conservation tillage side. It's pretty well established that you can typically reduce labor, machinery, and energy costs when you do no-till. But there's also sometimes increases in inputs, particularly for pest control, and yield responses to no-till and conservation tillage vary, so profit response also varies. In the Northeast, we've had a really wide acceptance of an adoption of no-till in Maryland and Pennsylvania, and it's increasing quite a bit in New York. But as you go up north into the New England states, it's not been adapted as widely, mostly because of cooler temperatures. And again, you need multiple years for those practices to take hold. So I guess with that, I can wrap up. Actually, the next slide just has my email if anybody has any would like any additional information.
Thank you, Curt. Sorry to rush you, just trying to keep us all on time.
No, I was right there.
That was great. You were right there. We do have one question from Tom Miles. And I apologize, Tom, I didn't catch whether this was for Cait or for Curt, but maybe the two of them will recognize it. Tom asks, are you including biochar in your consideration of soil organic carbon?
Not directly, but I mean, that could be a practice, but in our economic analysis, we're not going to look at biochar additions. We're basically, as I said, sticking with conservation tillage and cover crops. But manure would be another thing too that we could be looking at as an organic amendment. But we haven't expanded it into that.
And the same thing goes for the Southern Plains Climate Hub. When I did the soil health study that I was talking about, and the primary soil health management, I guess, practices that we used were no-till and cover crops, and a little bit of like different crop rotations and grazing. But dual use is fairly common here, so it's difficult to call it a soil health management technique because everybody does it, which is cool, but makes it a little complex.
And I'll also say that I remember that the Northwest Climate Hub has been doing a lot of work on biochar. And so if that's a topic that interests you, be sure to go visit the Northwest Climate Hub's website, and you might find more information there. Not sure what analyses they have done, but I know they've been studying it. Dennis?
And just connecting, the person who did that study for the Northwest was a partner, is going to be moving to the National Laboratory for Agriculture and the Environment, where the Midwest Climate Hub is housed. So some of that work may also be coming in-house to our laboratory.
Excellent. We do have one other question that came in earlier, but I'm going to hold on to it. We'll stay on time here. It's a bit of a more general question, so I'll see if I can sneak it into the next discussion period. So Mike Morris, apologies, we haven't gotten to your question yet, but we will shortly. It is about time to move into our next little section of presentations. I think, Dennis, you're taking over.